Hey everybody, Dr. Mike. Let's look at the conclusion to the course, the conclusion section of the book, Integration and the Road to Mastery. So let's have a peek here. The agenda for this presentation: integration, behavioral complexity, this thing called the negative zone, what that is, how master managers see the world, the leveraging power of lift, and the never-ending road to mastery. So the negative zone, too much of a good thing. Too much of a good thing means that a person is focused on perhaps one style of managing and is very, very good at it, but so good at it that other styles or other models that we've talked about throughout the course are left out. So in the text, and I believe I'm looking at this here now, I think it's page 317 is where this model is located. You can see how to read this. Here are the basic quadrants of the model. So collaborate had to do with the human relations model. Create had to do with the open systems model. Control had to do with the rational goal setting model. And the oppressive egoless down here, the compete, had to do with the internal process model. Actually, I said that backwards. This is the internal process model, and this over here is the rational goal-setting model. Okay, and the way that you look at this is by looking at some of the behaviors. So when we're looking at the permissive pushover here, which would be the positive and negative zone, so the permissive pushover in the human relations model, you can see negative zone means things like soft-hearted, permissive, abdicates authority, overly democratic, and so on. However, the positive zone would be caring, sympathetic, shows consideration, process-oriented, facilitates interaction. So that's how you read the model. So spend some time with that model to be sure as we end up, finish up the course here, you've done a lot of assessing of your own competencies, and perhaps you can find yourself somewhere on this model. So take a look. Here is the organizational level. Okay, here was the leader, competing values framework, and then here is the organizational level, competing values framework, positive and negative zones. So the organization as an irresponsible country club. So the organization would allow extreme permissiveness, uncontrolled individualism, inappropriate participation, unproductive discussion. The organization as a country club. The organization as a frozen bureaucracy. Procedural, sterility, trivial, rigor, habitual perpetuation, and so on. The organization as an oppressive sweatshop. All right? And finally up here, the tumultuous anarchy. There we go, where we see premature responsiveness, disastrous experimentation, political expediency, and so on. So very interesting approaches there. Here's a summary. Of course, we've been using this throughout the entire course. The collaborate model has to do with the human relations approach. The create model has to do with the open systems approach. The control model has to do with the internal process approach, and the compete model has to do with the rational goal approach. Behavioral complexity and performance. This sort of speaks back to even the opening chapters, that we know that the manager who has the cognitive complexity to become what we call a master manager, the behavioral repertoire to move through all the paradoxes and move from model to model, and in so doing develop and deliver a behavioral repertoire. So here's the behavioral complexity, and here's the behavioral repertoire. Seeing like a master manager, systems thinking, some great questions to ask yourself as you finish up the course. Do you see only parts, or do you see the entire organization? Can you see how A's impact on B may eventually come back to impact A, and so on, as you can see here, A to B to C to A. Every change in an organization affects everything else. Seeing like a master manager, paradoxical thinking. Can you see the paradox between trying to be not faster, and in so doing not being as good, but to be faster and better, to be better and cheaper, to be cheaper and innovative, to be innovative and familiar. All of these which seem opposed to one another, in a way to bridge the paradox. Are you imprisoned by your own comfort zone? Real important question that any of us can ask ourselves. The leveraging power of lift, these key psychological states. So shifting your behavior to be other-focused in the human relations perspective, to be externally open from the open systems perspective, to be internally directed from the internal process perspective, and to be purpose-centered from the rational goal process, goal-setting process or model. The never-ending road to mastery. So, here we are. The idea in the course was that you would learn something about yourself through many of those assessments that you've taken, the conversations and discussions that you've had with others online, and of course, completing the quizzes and paying attention to your reading in the book. And I hope that you do develop a change strategy. Are there things that you want to do to further develop some of the competencies that you'd like to have that aren't as developed yet, and that you actually do implement a change strategy for doing so? Don't forget to look for and eliminate your own excuses for resisting changing. That if a person has a tough time with a change, the person benefits by waking up to how they prevent themselves from changing in the first place. Steps to mastery: novice, advanced, beginner, competent, proficient, expert. You can see that in the text. Here are some of the behavioral definitions. And final reflections: how can you build on your strengths, stay out of the negative zone, see the big picture without losing track of the details, accept ideas from others while still living on your own personal values, lift people up instead of bringing them down? All of these are kind of paradoxical in nature. And that's it. So this is the end of the PowerPoint presentations. This covered the conclusion section of the book. Hope you enjoyed the presentations. As I mentioned in the beginning, be sure to back up the presentation experience by reading the material in the book. And that's it. So I hope you enjoyed them, and I will see you back in the classroom in the threads.